Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome to another Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. And Kevin, it's time to do the real thing. We've got real basketball coming up this week for the Razorbacks. The Hogs open the season on Wednesday against Lipscomb before a really fascinating Baylor matchup later in the week. We'll get to all that, but we got to talk the fake stuff first. Let's talk exhibitions here. Arkansas gets it done against Kansas. John Calipari said don't do any triple backflips over the win, all of that stuff, and then Arkansas turns around, falls to TCU. What were your big takeaways from the Hogs and the Frogs? That rhymes. I like that. In Dickey's Arena. And obviously, Arkansas, it wasn't televised. A lot of fans didn't get to see it, but nonetheless, a game that came down to the wire and TCU ultimately coming away with it.
I didn't get to see that one either.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest takeaway is none of it counts. Nothing helps your one-loss record or hurts it. Nothing in the postseason resume building, your analytics, all that stuff. But I think there are some things you take out of this, and you get opportunities to grow and learn, both from wins and losses. And I think what we learned against Kansas was Arkansas was ready for the moment in that first dress rehearsal. I would say the same thing going on the road for what I call a true road game. Yes, it wasn't on TCU's campus, but they're in Fort Worth, and you're playing. There were probably more Arkansas fans there. Again, I didn't see it. That's what I heard. But Arkansas built an 8-point lead at halftime, a 13-point lead late in the third quarter, did some really good things in that game. Of course, let go of the rope, if you want to look at it that way, a 10-0 run in the last minute 30 of that third quarter. It was 8 of those 10 points, and then the first basket of the fourth quarter got TCU within a possession, and then it was back and forth, and then TCU goes on a 5-0 run, in the final 2:38 when Arkansas failed to score in that stretch. So Arkansas let go of it, lost by a point. And so you had a mixed bag in terms of one-loss results, again, that don't count. But I think the biggest takeaways, there are several. I think some of the biggest ones when you look at team dynamics, Arkansas shot the ball well for the most part, except for behind the three-point line, shot really well from the free throw line against Kansas, did a poor job there, only 6 of 11, didn't get there a lot and didn't convert enough. TCU wasn't much better, but it was a little bit better, 8 of 14. And when the margins are that thin on the scoreboard, it's little stuff like that that matters. So we've got a mixed bag there. Arkansas hasn't been at full strength. Let's remember that. Another big takeaway. No, Jonas, they do. And I think it helps speak to some of the other stuff I'm going to talk about. Arkansas's lost the rebounding battle by 1 to Kansas, won it by 5. So improved there overall against TCU. But in both games, Arkansas came up short in small margins on the offensive glass and in second chance points. But again, in a game like you had against TCU where it's back and forth in the last 4 minutes, those small margins add up and hurt you. Arkansas also. So I think Adu's presence as a rebounder, over 7 rebounds per game last year in an all SEC season at Tennessee. But when you drill that down even more, he played less than 25 minutes a game. So when you expand that to a look at what his production was over a 40-minute game, not that he's going to play 40 every night, but the idea is here's a volume rebounder and one of the top defenders in the league. Arkansas has been missing that. So even what you didn't see is what I think helps emerge in terms of takeaways, where Arkansas struggled in both games despite having a 16-point win over, again, the caveat is Kansas had 3 guys out, including the big man Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah.
We saw TCU's Ernest Udeh Jr., another big man who started his career at Kansas, has been at TCU the last couple of years, gave Arkansas fits with his physicality. And I think so we started to see what the absence of Adu might have meant to dynamics. And then just individually, I think against TCU, you saw the production go way down for DJ Wagner, even Boogie Fland, although Fland sparked some life in that offense in the fourth quarter when it was kind of back and forth, hit a couple of big shots in there to kind of keep Arkansas in front, go from a 1-possession to 2-possession lead. But aside from that, those guys combined for 8 turnovers. And that was a problem because the assist, Fland was still around. He had 5 again, like he did against Kansas, but their shooting numbers were down. And then the turnovers, I thought, were magnified. And if you look at turnovers, we talked about rebounding. This is another problem. Arkansas was -6 in this game against TCU, and even though they were +4 against Kansas, in both games, Arkansas had a small amount of turnovers in the first half. I think only 3 against Kansas, only 4 against TCU. In both second halves, 4-quarter games, third and fourth quarters combined, Arkansas with 10 turnovers each against Kansas and then again TCU. And that was part of the undoing on the road against TCU. So you have multiple things going on there. Another big takeaway before we move on to something else, a couple actually. Nelly Davis, we haven't seen his offensive
Yeah.
firepower yet, hasn't even been starting in these games. And then the other thing is just playing that game in Dallas Fort Worth may not seem like a lot, but when you just said when we opened that the real thing happens this week, you
Mm-hmm.
talked about that intriguing matchup against Baylor. That's back in Dallas Fort Worth. So Calipari and his staff have talked about a roadkill ritual, which is just familiarizing with what their expectations are, how they do everything on and off the court when they're on the road. And now you're going to go back to the same place you were just at. You're obviously looking for a different result. And boy, wouldn't that be great? The 8th ranked Baylor Bears, Arkansas 16th ranked. Don't overlook Lipscomb. That should not be a trap game in your season opener, a team that gave Arkansas fits last year. But Arkansas, yeah, you said it. Things are about to get real.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, you hit a lot of the turnover stuff and all of that. I think it's important to note again and again and again, these games don't count. They don't count positively. They don't count negatively. But like you said, there are things you can glean and take away. And you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning there. But for me, is you kind of just box score watch both of these games, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Arkansas is going to need to shoot the ball better. 6 of 24, 7 of 24. That's 25% from behind three. So that's something this team thinks it can do and it's going to have to do. But the positive that I took away, despite some people struggling offensively, was that 20-point outing from Adu Thiero. Because if you pull up that game log from last year, he was kind of in and out of that Kentucky lineup. Cal's talked about that a lot, and he didn't crack 20 once all last year. So it's an exhibition game, and, you take what you can away from it, but good at least to see Adu get going there. And as we transition to the real thing here, you bring up Lipscomb. It's a team in North Little Rock last year that gave Arkansas a lot of trouble. You look towards Baylor, you're excited about Baylor, but Arkansas's got to take care of Lipscomb first.
Yeah, and I mean, it's John Calipari's official opener. I know the sexy one was going up against Bill Self and number one Kansas, but again, it didn't count. And you brought up Thiero. Last year, a double-double against Kansas in the regular season. That was a mid-November loss for Kentucky, only by 5 points, I believe, on a neutral site. So he's been kind of up and down, but you said he broke the 20-point scoring mark. It didn't count. But he also rebounded well. He assisted well. He was basically Arkansas's best player. And you want to see carryover from him. You want to see maybe Nelly Davis take the next step and crack double figures in this opener. You expect Boogie Flynn and DJ Wagner. I still think those guys are in your starting backcourt a lot. But Carter Knox has gotten the nod at the wing these 2 exhibition games. Is Nelly Davis maybe there? Is Jonas Adu back? But I think Arkansas is going to take care of business in that opener. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not going to say it's going to be like it was against Kansas, basically an Arkansas advantage throughout. Excuse me, but I do think Arkansas takes care of business. And then we pay attention to that Baylor game. I don't have any predictions for that one, but I think Arkansas, obviously, best case scenario is to go 2-0. I think Arkansas is built. This roster is built to be a 2-0 team after week 1. 1-1, betting odds, that may be the safest way to go. We'll see. 0-2, I just don't see that. And I do think Arkansas opens the John Calipari era in style with a win at Bud Walton Arena on Wednesday. And again, there are some question marks about the 3-point shooting. And then just based on 2 exhibition games, free throw shooting was good in one, not in the other. 3-point shooting, we bring it back up, not good in either. And then turnovers in second halves of games. That can be problematic even when you build leads because it'll can let teams back in. And we saw that with TCU.
Yeah, and turnovers are always, we talked about this at some point in the summer, but turnovers are always going to be a bit elevated, right? When you play at the pace that Cal wants to play at, stuff's going to happen. But there's a fine line with that, right? Where when you start talking silly turnovers and giving the ball away for no reason, those are the ones that really bite you. And I think you're right in terms of Nelly Davis, John L. Davis. This is a guy that has done it, scored, at almost a 20-point clip at the highest level, right? You'd really like to see him get going against Lipscomb because we keep saying the real thing. Baylor is the real thing. That's a really talented team. They've got a one-and-done freshman. That it's going to be a really talented team. It's going to be a really big schedule, or really big challenge, rather, for Arkansas. You'd like to see him get going because he's going to be an offensive focal point for Arkansas all season long. Maybe he starts to find his rhythm a little bit against Lipscomb. Arkansas needs it.
That's why you like to see guys like Fland and DJ step up like they did against Kansas. You mentioned Adu Thiero against TCU. We still really haven't seen Trevor in Brazil, who can score. Even though that hasn't been consistent in his career, he can have those kind of games. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen Jonas Adu. And the other thing is, I think Carter Knox has been sneaky helpful
Yeah.
in these two games. He has. He's not. It's not about scoring as much, but he's got good size on the wing, and he fits a role. He's been a good rim runner, getting to that dunker spot on the baseline. Been good in transition at times, and so you kind of can't wait to see how this stuff starts to come together. But when you go back to those turnovers, and you said it, we've been talking about that. Some of the things that help offset that are a couple of things. How good is Arkansas in transition? Well, they've been better in both games, but the margins haven't been as wide or as big as I think they can be. And I think that's because of some of Arkansas's unforced turnovers have led to some easy scores. So the best way to widen that gap in transition is to limit your unforced turnovers. And then the other part of it is to offset it is being really good on the glass. I expect this Arkansas team to be better than it has in both games. Even though it improved from Kansas relative to TCU, Brazil with the 9 rebounds. Nelly Davis putting in that work in the backcourt, averaged over 6 rebounds per game last year. We mentioned Theo and his 7 boards. Some other guys stepped up. But I really think Arkansas needs to be better on the glass in concert with taking a little better care of the basketball. You mentioned the pace. Yeah, you're going to have some turnovers. The enforced ones, live ball that helped the other team in transition. And then one guy that we really didn't talk about is Big Z's Zvonimir Ivisic. And what we've seen from him so far is really more of an impact on the perimeter. He has blocked some shots. Arkansas blocked 10 shots against TCU. Ivisic was part of the block party. So there's that. But I think when you look at some of the rebounding, and Arkansas not winning any of the points in the paint battles in exhibition season, part of that is because no Adu, coupled with Big Z being more comfortable mostly playing outside, taking some threes, working the passing game. You want to utilize that, but you got to find a way to get better with all your athleticism, length, and those things, finishing in the paint, getting to the basket. Transition's only a part of that. You got to figure out a way to be good in those slash game, throwing over the defense opportunities in your half court. And I think when Jonas Adu comes back, speculating here, I think he gets back probably this week. If not for the opener, I would think he'd be ready by Baylor. I don't know. I'm speculating. No one's given us a clear path to an answer there when the coaches talk on it. But I think Arkansas shores up some things that we just talked about in that paint and on that glass when he does return.
Yeah, and again, it's been hammered by Cal over and over and over again, but this is going to be a slow process. There's going to be bumps, right, when you're putting together a team. He always has a new team. This is a different situation. It's, a whole entire team built from scratch. And Ivisic, you mentioned there, I think is really interesting because in one of the post-game press conferences, Cal talked about, man, he barely even played last year, right? He joined the team midway through the year trying to get accustomed to getting into school, coming across the pond and all of that. And I think he can really be an asset for Arkansas. But on the boards is where Jonas Adu, I think, is really going to help, as well as defensively in the paint. But transitioning to some recruiting stuff now, that's an area Coach Cal never stops. He keeps going at all times. And Arkansas continues to place a couple of priority targets here. Even as the regular season rolls around, Coach Cal and the Hogs still moving on the recruiting front.
They have to. And the early signing period, it's only a week long, November 13th through 20th. We're less than 2 weeks from the start of that. You have a little NCAA dead period from the 11th through the 14th. So just a little bit of overlap into the start of that early signing period. And you still have visit opportunities. Really, I think Arkansas has a bye week in football this coming weekend, and Arkansas obviously will be in Dallas on Saturday. So I don't see any visitors happening that weekend. But what I do envision is a potential to have recruits on campus when Arkansas hosts Texas on November 16th. You are smack dab in the middle of that early period. There's a potential there to sew anything up on guys that you're still trying to get on campus. Caleb Wilson, a top 5 rated 5-star, 6'9" combo forward out of Atlanta, tweeted on Monday that he was going to visit Arkansas on the weekend. Well, he'd missed the previous weekend when the Arkansas had that exhibition game against Kansas, and the football Hogs were on the road the following day at Mississippi State. That was a weekend that was targeted for him to visit. That was never made public. It didn't happen. That he publicly said a day later on Monday that he was going to visit this past weekend when Arkansas was hosting Ole Miss. Let's not football Hogs. Let's get past that real quick and just
Never
acknowledge
happened.
that there
Never
was a
happened.
game that they were. Maybe it was good that he didn't make it, but as it turned out, he decided not to make that trip, and it would have been a different kind of a weekend visit because the basketball team was in Dallas on Friday night. You still could have done it. He could have done it. He said he was going to do it, and then it changed. His dad saying, according to Adam Zagoria, college basketball analyst, told him that Calipari's still going to get his visit from Caleb Wilson. Wilson told me back in July, I'm definitely visiting Arkansas. It'll be sometime during football season. So maybe there's a chance to still get him in. I've thought for a while he would sign early. Some folks are now questioning that. Maybe he pushes it to the spring, but probably the best two-way player because of his defense in high school. Again, a very versatile, he can switch. He's switchable, and he can help you defend all 5 positions in different scenarios, which makes him an asset on the high school level because most high school guys, their offense is way ahead of their defense. And a lot of stuff still to work on offensively, by the way, making that transition to the high major level. Wilson may be a little different there. But Arkansas expect the signature in the early period from committed Darius Acuff Jr., 6'3" guard out of Detroit, IMG Academy. Committed to Arkansas in July. He'll sign with the Razorbacks during the early period. I think Malik Thomas, who visited Arkansas in early October, another top 10 rated 5-star guard, 6'4" out of Pittsburgh, playing in overtime in Atlanta. I believe Arkansas gets him and will get him signed during the early period. And then you've got your eyes open on several players that have visited so far, leaving Wilson on the table to now, because until he makes it to campus, his interest level, in my opinion, is lukewarm until you proof's in the pudding when you get to campus. And Kentucky may be the leader there as it stands now. But looking at some guys that have visited, Shauna Bynum, 6'7" combo forward, who visited just a few days after Tom out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, top 25 rated 4-star. I think he's a 5-star value. At least one analyst believes Arkansas is in the lead there. He's got Arkansas in his final 5. It's a list that includes one other SEC school in Auburn, Oregon, Arizona State, and Cincinnati. So Arkansas may be in the lead for Abayev. Chris Sinak Jr., a top 10 rated 5-star forward. I think he's a 4-5, a stretch 4 or a 4-5 combo at the college level at a Link Academy in Branson. He's originally from Baton Rouge, which might explain why a lot of analysts think LSU's in the lead there. He's set to visit LSU this month as a lead up to the early signing period, but he visited Arkansas that weekend of October 18th to the 20th. I was told he was very impressed with that visit. And I think Arkansas is in a clump of schools. It's Arkansas. He's got a final 7 list. Arkansas's in it, but I think it comes down to LSU, Arkansas, and maybe Kentucky there. That's why the Caleb Wilson sweepstakes with both Arkansas and Kentucky involved with him and Sinak are kind of interesting. It could be the Razorbacks get one of those two and Kentucky gets the other one. I think LSU is probably the spoiler for Sinak, and maybe North Carolina is the spoiler if there is a third team for Wilson. But having put those names out there, to me, those are both, when you look at the front line, possibilities, because Sean Abayev, I mentioned him, 6'7" combo guard, he would complement both Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas in a 1-2-3 lead guard, shooting guard, wing scenario. Now you're trying to get Wilson or Sinak. Calipari would take both if he can get him. I don't think that's likely. I think it's probably one or the other. But then you could see maybe where he's trying to round out that 3 or 4 that he takes. And look, Isaiah Sealy, a 4-star up in Springdale, another 6'7" combo guard, versatile guy. I think he's in the works and the plans. Arkansas's in his final 4. He recently was on campus for an unofficial visit to attend practice, met with Calipari afterward, attended a couple of days later that Kansas game at Bud Walton. And he's a guy that I think could be part of your developmental part of this recruiting class, because we know technically Arkansas in this first one, guys he brought from Kentucky that are in the rotation, there are 3 of those, but there are 3 other freshmen technically in sort of that developmental part of it. So there's more than one way to look at this, and we'll see how much it all shakes out for the earlier period. But I'm told Arkansas coaches think they're getting as many 2, maybe 3 that they feel good about they'll get done early. And again, that period starts November 13th and ends the 20th.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are talking about it, but it's hard not to get excited about the Acuff Malik Thomas pairing when you think about how dynamic those two potentially could be in the backcourt. Regardless, a whole laundry list of targets for Cal and company. That's going to be the case. It's going to be the case moving forward for the Hogs. But hey, wrapping up before we go, let's talk a little bit of pro Hogs. The next level, Arkansas has got a fair amount of guys in the NBA, and it's hard to believe we're already 2+ weeks into the NBA season, and a whole lot of pro Hogs making an impact at the next level.
Yeah, and some of the guys, some of them are the there's 11 of them, and some of these guys are the usual suspects. You look at Bobby
Yeah,
Portis, what he's doing for a Milwaukee team that's really struggling out of the gates. I think they're 1-4 now.
bad. Yeah.
Lost a heartbreaker last night to a really good Cleveland team in Milwaukee. Lost by a point. Daniel Gafford in the starting lineup, splitting time at that center spot in Dallas. Two really good teams recently. But you look at what Isaiah Joe's doing in Oklahoma City, over 8 points a game so far. The Thunder are 6-0. He's shooting between 41 and 42% on volume from three. One of their top rotation guys, Moses Moody, averaging 11 points per game and shooting the ball really, really well, especially from three. So far, career best for him. Only 6 game in, small sample size, but he's helped Golden State. He started last night in a win on the road against a good Houston Rockets team. That organization's turned it around in the last couple of years. But he was in the overtime game, and he started and had 9 points last night, but averaging 11 per game so far. Golden State's 5-1, and they've been doing most of that with Steph Curry out injured. And then you look at Anthony Black, putting up good numbers so far. Not only a big part of the rotation in Orlando, but back in the starting lineup. Last year, he started basically half of the games he played in, and as a rookie, and now he's you're seeing his assist numbers, his rebounds. He's blocking shots, getting steals. He's a better shooter from three than what we ever thought he would be because he's taking good ones. I think he hit a game winner in week one. It was a quarter three. So Anthony Black off to a good start. And then when you look around, Jalen Williams has been hurt. He's been dealing with a hamstring issue at OKC. He's not played in the preseason. He had a setback with that. He's out another 4 to 6 weeks. This is a contract year for him. That is really, really tough. You look at Nick Smith Jr. made his first appearance yesterday for Charlotte in a brief 10 minutes. But Charlotte recently opted to lock in his the third year of his rookie deal. So that's always good. And then Jordan Walsh, I wanted to finish with Jordan. There's guys I'm leaving out, but Jordan Walsh has been in Boston's second unit rotation, not only in the preseason, but so far in the regular season. Look, he's given them good minutes. The other night he had, and he's always a box plus. I mean, Boston's the best team in the league. Porzingis has been out, and they're still the best team in the league. I think they've lost one game, but most people consider that to be the best team in the NBA, even without Porzingis right now. But Walsh is getting those minutes, and he's getting praise from teammates and coaches. Arkansas basketball, the brand is strong. John Calipari makes it stronger, but don't sleep on the Pro Hogs that preceded him. I mean, again, it tells you where it partly helps understand why Calipari wanted to be here. He wasn't going to just parachute out of Kentucky anywhere. But you look at what Pro Hogs are doing, it helps the brand, certainly helps the brand and helps recruiting.
Yeah, keeps pushing that brand forward. Walsh and Black were the two that stood out to me from the standpoint that both on really, really good teams. The Magic off to a really good start as well, and they're obviously a young and up-and-coming team. I'm a Pacers fan and had to watch Banchero drop 39 in the first half en route to a Magic win. That's a really good team, and he's starting and playing well for them. And Jordan Walsh, the fact that he's contributing to a team that's that stacked in the cell. I know Porzingis is out, but you're talking about a team that just is stacked at every single position. It's great to see those guys making real impacts.
No, I agree. And they're just in year two, and this shows you how when you start working on just your game at that level, you don't have school, you don't have these other things that shouldn't be distractions. But for basketball players going to make a living at it, it's a small window. Once they're locked in, you start to see guys either pick it up and get in and help themselves. And sometimes you don't see that. But for all the Pro Hogs, it's been the case where they've helped themselves, and you see it over and over again. So many of them play the right way. They understand it's not about them in team ball, or they better embrace that, because there's only a few superstars and guys who are the man. And some of these guys are used to being stars their whole lives. You get to this level, you got to figure out how to fit in, and then do your thing. And we're seeing each Pro Hog take make the most of that. The one guy who's out now and playing overseas is Patrick Beverly, and what a run he had as a blue collar guy, kind of setting the standard. He was one of those guys that had to take the long way to get in, and he had a nice NBA career. Who knows if we'll ever see him in the NBA again, but he had a good run.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the quintessential when you think about a guy that you love to have on your team and you hate him if he is on the other team. That is Patrick Beverly. He's a pest in the best possible way. Hopefully he keeps having a good career across the pond. But that's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. Big time week coming up. We've got Arkansas basketball every week for the next, I guess, 4+ months, hopefully as long as possible into April. Arkansas opens the season with Lipscomb on Wednesday. Baylor coming up the weekend after the Lipscomb game. Again, that's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next week.